All right, so with my sprint days, acceleration or max velocity, I like to get my pogos to match the angle at which I am sprinting. So my max velo pogos are usually more vertical, whereas my acceleration pogos are usually more in a dorsiflexed or horizontal type fashion. So today I'm going to go over um, pogo step or pogo hop to step with dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. Just a quick reminder, right? Plantar flexion would be toes down, dorsiflexion would be toes up. So all that is, I'm either facing the slant board or I'm turned away from the slant board. So to start, I'll go with dorsiflexion. I'm doing a pogo onto the board and off of the board, so I'm kind of getting double work here. And with those, I'm always really trying to pull my toes up to kind of accentuate that dorsiflexion action. Now with plantar flexion, can be facing away. Now I don't necessarily want to be pointing my toes down because I don't want to be doing pogos off my tippy toes. Just slightly, okay, to expose the ball of the foot to the angle of the board a little bit more. All right, so then when I get to I like to do plyometrics when I get into my sprint days. I keep the volume pretty low. It's usually just used as like a primer, so I just do a couple, 2 sets of 3, 2 sets of 4. So today what I'm going to do band resisted broad jumps and then just traditional regular broad jumps. So a bit of a loaded, unloaded thing. So going to get the band around my waist here. And again, with acceleration, we're trying to get horizontal. Okay, so that's why working on these horizontal jumps, whereas max velocity would be more of a vertical jump or like a depth drop type of jump, that sort of thing. So band around the waist here. I'm going to try to get into what I would think my 2-point start would look like. So I want my shins to be forward, chest to be forward. So that way when I jump, I can project my hips forward and out to cover as much distance as possible. Walk it back in. Okay, get set. One thing with these, you want to really want to make sure that you have tension on the band. If you're starting with slack in the band, you're getting tension as you're in the air. You're not really working on anything. So make sure that you have tension on the band. Obviously, as you get better at it, you can go more. Obviously, it gets way harder as you go out. All right, last one. All right, so then take the band away. Now I like to do the loaded first. Gets the nervous system to kind of overreact, is I guess a good way to put it. Same thing with like weightlifting. If you were to do like a heavy bench press and then do like a medicine ball chest pass, you want to be heavy on the bench press so that the way the nervous system, like I said, overreacts. So that when you go to throw the med ball, you kind of get that overspeed stimulus there. So now we're going with the unloaded jumps. Usually I would measure these, but just getting back into it, so I'll just see what I can get, see how springy I feel. All right, let's do one more. Ooh, gotta get. For acceleration work, I really like to do my at least beginning technique work on the wall. You're not moving, so it's heavily constrained. You can really just focus on what you're doing with your lower half, and you can really feel what posture your body's holding. So going to go through my wall drill series. I'm just going to go right into, I'm going to do marches and then go into single switches and double switches. There is some people out there, some track coaches and sprint coaches that don't necessarily like the wall drill because you're landing in a more extended position than you would normally be in on the ground. Although that's a good point, a lot of the athletes that we deal with, and a lot of field sport athletes in general, they don't understand the switching that needs to take place accelerating. It's just a big cycle to grab ground right off the get-go, and they're just not accelerating as efficiently as we could. That's why I really like the wall series. It gives them good context for that. And then obviously when it comes to actually sprinting or doing any sort of unconstrained drill work, is they can actually feel what the switch is supposed to feel like, and then the body just kind of figures it out when it comes to making contact with the ground. So gonna just go into the march here. Again, I want to be in a straight line. I'm in that forward lean, really trying to feel myself projecting out. Gonna be on the balls of my feet here, right? I'm just gonna go with the march. So I'm looking for knee up, toe up, okay? Working on the switch. I want to avoid going here, kicking back. Okay, I don't want to just pound the ground here. Working from my hip to exchange. Again, so feeling my body in the straight line. And again, the key to acceleration is being able to drive your foot back into the ground. So if you look at if you want to get scientific here, Newton's laws. If you look at the third one, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So that's the reason I like these drills so much, is because a lot of people will get here. Okay, if I strike the ground here, the ground is then pushing back up to me in the exact opposite direction. Okay, if my foot's striking here, I'm creating a break. Okay, if I'm trying to accelerate, I don't want any breaks whatsoever, which is why we must strike back. If I strike back, okay, I'm striking the ground that way, the ground's pushing me back into the ground this way, and that's why I go forward. So that's why I like these so much. All right, now from there, I'm gonna go into my switches. As you can see, these are different from the march. As this leg is going down, the other one's coming up. And also a big key with these ones is when you strike the ground, you don't want the foot to collapse. So that's where all the pogos and stuff come in, is to build stiffness through this tendon. So when you strike the ground and the foot collapses, we lose all of the energy that we're trying to put into the ground. And then obviously worst case scenario is you're exposing your Achilles to an extreme range of motion there. Could open yourself up from injury, and that's obviously no good anyways. So from single switches, I like to then go into my double switches. It's 2 steps. Now, we want to make sure that we're getting big on both of these steps. We don't want to be here big on one and small on the other, okay? Because that's just telling our brain bad habits. Nobody runs like that. If we ran like that, we'd run in a circle. Okay, so I like to do about 5 each side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now switch and get the other side. Good. So that's usually my technique work for this. Again, start with constrained and then kind of move into the more advanced, like free running type drills. All right, so then once I'm done with my wall constrained technique stuff, I like to go into my more free runs. But I'm a big believer in like smooth transitions in that. So instead of going right into just free running and whatever it might be and timing my sprints, I usually like to do some sort of sled, weighted sled sprint. It's obviously not as constrained as the wall, but still gives you good feedback to where you really have to produce force into the ground to get going. It helps you check your form, but do it in a faster pace. So gonna use the sled here. Just gonna go a 10-yard sprint with it. The speed at which I do this isn't so much important. I'm more doing this to check my switch and make sure that my technique is good. And then the next drill I'm going to do is the wicket run. That's where I care more about the speed and how everything's actually moving. So again, smooth transitions, good progressions is a good way to go about it. So that way you're not, a lot of people miss gaps. They just want to go right from wall drill to free sprints. And they just miss a lot of context in between. That often leads to inefficient starting. So gonna get set here. I want to get as close to the wall drill position as I can. It's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be close enough. And then from there, just put force in the ground and make sure that I'm efficient with what I'm doing. Oh, I forgot that sled gets. All right, so the next we got wicket drills. Big fan of these because it gives athletes a frame of how big your stride should be. And it also gives them an idea, because what a lot of people do is they just try to step big for the sake of stepping big. And again, if the foot lands here, if we go back to Newton, is that if the foot lands here, the ground is going to push back in the exact opposite motion. I'm creating a braking force because the force is coming back into my body like this. Whereas if I actually project out, and get the foot to go back behind me, I keep projecting myself forward and accelerating that way. Wickets can also be used for increasing someone's stride length or speeding them up. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. So for a more advanced athlete, you can use them to spread them out. They have more single leg strength. They're able to project out more. For an athlete that is just looking to get going and kind of feel the framework, you can kind of tighten them up a little bit and just start getting them to move fast. Obviously, you want to find a balance in between the two. You got to be able to cover ground without reaching, and you've got to be quick. So there's no point in being long and slow, and then it's equally as bad being really short and really fast. So you kind of got to find the happy medium in between, and that's just trial and error, just kind of seeing what you get here. So I've got these spaced out to something I think will challenge me where I'm still able to do the correct form. And then another thing that people often forget is as soon as they get out of the hurdles, a lot of people just shut it down. You got to make sure that you keep the acceleration through whatever distance you're going to do. For today, we're going to do 10 yards. So don't just treat the 3 hurdles or the 3-4 steps that you're going to do as the drill. Make sure you continue it all the way through. So you want to get set in your 2-point stance. Okay, and then our first step is going to land here. That's another common mistake is people will step here, and that's when we kind of get into this choppy type step where really short and really fast doesn't do any good. So be explosive and fast. All right, finish up time and sprints. I'm gonna go 2-point starts here, just 10 yards. If I'm being completely honest, still a little nervous about the hamstring, even though I've done, what is it now, 12 weeks of max velocity sprinting. It should be fine, but the sudden acceleration still kind of scares me a little bit. So we're gonna kind of see what we get at a lower percentage, kind of see where our times are at, and if we're feeling good, then we'll let a couple rip. All right, another thing with these is that people will favor one leg over the other and just get really, really good at one leg. Just be good at both, right? You're going to need to accelerate off both legs at some point. You might as well be good at both, so that way there's no drop off, and also just make sure that one isn't just susceptible to injury because you haven't ever used it. So gonna make sure I switch legs after every rep. All right, here, last one. Finished up, actually feeling pretty decent.